Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. Washington State had a roller coaster of a season in 2021. Nick Rolovich was fired about midway through the year, and Jake Dickert was promoted to interim head coach. But Dickert did extremely well, going 3-3 down the stretch, including a win over Washington in the Apple Cup, and ultimately finishing the year at 7-6. The interim tag was removed, and now Jake Dickert is the man in Pullman, and he has a sneaky good football team heading into 2022. The Cougars might not make the Pac-12 championship or anything like that, but they certainly will determine who gets in. You take a look at their numbers, guys. Again, brought to you by College Football Encyclopedia. The Cougars are only 117th in the country in returning production. That's not good. 117th out of 130. But the most important player on their team wasn't even playing for them last year. Washington State added Cameron Ward, the quarterback transfer from Incarnate Word, a guy who had 48 touchdowns last season. He is now the quarterback that's going to run the air raid in Pullman. They also added Eric Morris, Cameron Ward's head coach at Incarnate Word, as their offensive coordinator. If Washington State's offensive line can hold up, the Cougars will be very, very dangerous on offense. Defensively, they ranked 63rd in the country last year, but led the Pac-12 in turnover margin at plus 11. There's tons of depth, tons of experience, 6 starters back, and Washington State is not afraid to play physical. They're not afraid to play anybody. And this is a team that, again, guys, might not have the most spectacular of years, but is a team that should go bowling and will play a major role in who makes that Pac-12 championship game. So we take a look at their schedule. Mark up a win against Idaho. Give them a 1-0 start. The road game at Wisconsin, that's where things will get interesting. That's their first true test. We'll see what Cameron Ward is made of. We'll see what this defense is made of. It's a rare opportunity for Washington State to play a Power 5 opponent in the non-conference. But Madison is tough, guys. Camp Randall Stadium, a very difficult place to play. Wisconsin is reloaded on defense, a defense that was number 1 in the nation statistically. I still say Georgia was the best defense. I think we'd all agree. But statistically, Wisconsin, number 1 in the country, and they ranked 4th versus the pass. They're reloading there. In a very hostile environment against a tough secondary, I wonder how well Washington State will be able to move the ball, especially in their first true test for Cameron Ward. We have them losing to Wisconsin on the road, but it should be a very fun and intriguing matchup in Week 2. We have them beating Colorado State in Week 3, so they're 2-1 going into Pac-12 play. There you go, 2-1. The game against Oregon at home is a big one. Here's the thing, guys. This is the game that's very, very tricky for the Ducks. Washington only lost to Oregon 38-24 last year. Only lost to them by 14 points. They get to host the Ducks now in Pullman. Lost by 14 in Eugene last year. And Oregon, while they do own the line of scrimmage edge, while they do own the edge on defense and on the offensive line, their weakness defensively would be in the secondary. And I believe that Cameron Ward and Washington State are going to be able to exploit that. I think they're going to be able to exploit it in a big way. I believe that they're going to be able to force at least 1, maybe 2 turnovers over Bo Nix that will result in points for Washington State, and the Cougars will upset Oregon in Pullman on September 24th. The Ducks, more than likely going to be a top 15 team at this point, maybe even top 10. We believe that Washington State will upset them. Big time game on September 24th, and we're going to hold to that behind the arm of Cameron Ward. So 3-1 should be ranked in the top 25. Washington State enters October, and they beat California. They beat the Golden Bears 21-6 last year, and again, logically, you look at it like this. You won 21-6 on the road last year. You're now hosting a California team that's about the same, maybe slightly better than last year, but we know that Washington State is much better than they were last year. They will beat the Golden Bears at home. They are 4-1. The schedule gets tough after that, though. They beat Oregon. Expectations are high. They're in the hunt for a Pac-12 title, but then they lose to USC. Going to the Coliseum to play a USC team that's completely different than what we saw last year, it's just not in the cards for the Cougars. Nothing about USC from last year is the same in 2022. Drastically different, and they will be a Pac-12 title contender this year under Lincoln Riley. So Washington State has handed their first conference loss to the Trojans, and they lose a second straight game on the road at Oregon State. The Cougars beat Oregon State 31-24 last year, but now they're on the road. And this is an Oregon State team that should be a little bit better, at least from a competitive standpoint and a statistical standpoint, should be a little bit better in 2022. 15 returning starters and a very, very solid defensive line. A defensive line that I think can exploit this Washington State offensive line and create a little pressure on Cameron Ward. If they can force him into just a few mistakes, Oregon State, I believe, will capitalize off of that, especially with the run game on offense. Oregon State at home beats the Cougars, and Washington State is now 4-3 heading into their bye week. Not a bad mark, though. First-year head coach, full-time for Jake Dickert, 4-3, just 2 wins away from making a bowl game. But coming out of the bye week, they face Utah. They have to play the Utes. Last year, they only fell to Utah 24-13, so only 11 points. But this is a different Utah team. Very different Utah team than what Washington State saw when they played them last year. Utah is arguably the most complete team within the conference. They're elite on both sides of the ball. And even though they have a week of rest, even though the game is at home, even though you know Washington State's going to be happy and pumped to be playing potential top 10 team on their home turf, Utah simply is too good. It will be close. I believe it will be extremely close. But Utah ultimately will pull away with that because of their defense, one that ranked 27th nationally last year. And the Cougars have now dropped their 3rd straight. We'll make it 4 with the road loss at Stanford. People I know are going to disagree with this entirely. How can you beat Oregon, lose to Stanford, lose to Oregon State? Look, a Stanford team that Washington State beat only by 3 last year, and that was also their last game with Nick Rolovich. Just keep that in mind. Last game under Nick Rolovich was against Stanford. Now that they are now going on the road to play Stanford, a Stanford team that has a pretty solid quarterback in Tanner McKee, a Stanford team that arguably has the best wide receiver core in the Pac-12 and could potentially, Washington State, potentially be coming off a Utah hangover. If they're devastated after a close loss or if they get annihilated, there is something to be said with a hangover and down on your luck after now suffering 3 straight losses and this potentially being your 4th. Stanford guys, they can't stop the run, but their secondary solid enough to stop the pass. And at home, for a Stanford team that's going to be desperately needing wins at this point in the year, I think David Shaw and the Cardinal defensively get it done. The bleeding stops for Washington State, though, against Arizona State. They beat Arizona State by 13 last year, and that was on the road. And we know how bad Arizona State should be this year. Lots of NCAA investigations going on. Secondary is abysmal. Questions on offense. Players and coaches leaving left and right. I think Cameron Ward and the offense have a field day against the Sun Devils. Home field advantage can play an even bigger role here. 5th win now for Washington State. 1 win away from bowl eligibility. Unfortunately for Washington State, bowl eligibility will not be clinched against Arizona. Many people will question why. They beat them 44-18 last year. But Jed Fish went out and got a lot of players in the transfer portal and a lot of players on the recruiting trail. But none bigger than Jayden de Laura, the Washington State quarterback from last year. Jayden de Laura, I believe, is going to be out for revenge against his former team. He's going to light it up at home against Washington State. He's going to try to make sure that Washington State has to clinch bowl eligibility in the Apple Cup, where prior to last year they had struggled for so many years. And I think Arizona, while they're not going to be great this year, they are going to be competitive. And I think their defense takes a step forward, and I think de Laura does just enough against this Washington State defense to get the win out in the desert, which means it's going to be a win-or-go-home situation for Washington State in the Apple Cup against Washington. Last year, they finally won. I think that's the game that saved Jake Dickert's job. That is what kept him in Pullman. They beat the Huskies 40-13. They stormed the field in Seattle. Now the game is in Pullman. And Washington State is going to win again. Washington State wants this game more than anything in the world. They obviously want to start their own streak in the Apple Cup. They know they need to win this game to go bowling. And while Washington was phenomenal last year against the pass, first in the country in stopping the pass, I believe they're going to crack just a little bit here. And I believe that Cameron Ward does just enough against this Washington team that still is going to be struggling to find their identity on offense. The Cougars win the Apple Cup for the 2nd year in a row. They finish the year at 6-6 and will be going bowling for the first time under Jake Dickert in his full first year as head coach in Pullman. And honestly, if you're a Cougars fan, you can't ask for anything else. He's laying a foundation. He's recruiting well. He's bringing in star players. Ward's going to have a fantastic year, and you will once again be back in the postseason. So, guys, there you go. Washington State, 6-6, sneaky good team in the Pac-12. We're going to see what happens. But until then, guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. Check out everything down in the description below. Make sure to go check out our website, thegridironexpert.com, and sign up for those expert picks to get some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country. Make sure to do that now. Sign up today so you don't miss out on any of the picks we have for you in the coming months. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.